Let's talk about the freedom of restrictions. First, when I say this, it really sounds contradicting because how could there be freedom in being restricted? But this is kind of what all of minimalism is based on. But today I don't want to specifically talk about that, but more so about the aspect when it comes to consumption and overall life and living a content life. But first, I think it's really, really important to say that I'm talking about restrictions that I make for myself. Like in general, I think it would be great if more humans, like if everyone has as many possibilities to have like freedom of choice, freedom of everything as possible. Like restrictions in that sense are bad. And I think we all deserve to be in control of our own lives and make our own decisions. But now let's talk about the people that I definitely belong to that usually do have a lot of freedom, but sometimes it even gets overwhelming. And I think restriction offers more freedom. Let me maybe walk you through my experience with this topic. So I'd say the first time I experienced this is because I want to have a lot of freedom, because I wanted to move abroad from Switzerland to Germany, but still I wanted to get rid of as many things as possible to make this move as easy as possible. And so I kind of restricted the things I owned to make more freedom happen in my life. And that kickstarted my whole minimalism journey. There's a whole video about that I can link you up here. But the more minimalist I became, or the more I wanted to declutter, it was always for the sake of freedom. So I'm restricting myself when it comes to the side of my belongings to then have more freedom when it comes to, I don't know, money, time, things like that. A very, very important part of that, I think, is also the decisions we make. So having 100 sweaters to choose from every day might sound great, especially to me because I love sweaters. But then on the other hand, it makes my life harder because I can't decide. And because I'm like, yeah, but this one is in the laundry and this one is there and this one needs to be fixed. And now I really want that one, but I have these 70 other sweaters, but I can't really choose. And I'm wasting a lot of my energy on this freedom of being able to choose. And in the end, it's not freeing at all. So restricting myself frees up a lot of resources. I did that with many things, especially when it comes to owning just one. So for the longest time, I owned just one jacket. I owned just one backpack, and I don't own any other like luggage. And that makes me not even needing to choose anything because I know it's going to be this one because I own just this one. So that's enough about the minimalism part, I think, and I hope you kind of get what I mean. But then over the years, a different aspect became really, really important to me, and that's actually what I really want to talk about today. And that is when it comes to consumption. So of course, not wanting to lead a very materialistic life, I don't want to own this much. And to not own this much, I either always need to declutter or I need to stop buying too many things. And this part is where it gets really interesting. A few weeks ago, I made a video about digital minimalism, and I said there that I hate setting up like boundaries and rules and things for myself because I'm just gonna hate myself and I'm gonna cross them anyways and I'm gonna feel miserable. It's kind of the same when it comes to many different kinds of rules. And so when it comes to consumption, I never really did a very strict no buy, or I never really just did very strict budgeting or anything like that. But I did have these guidelines of buying one thing a month for myself. And that worked well. But it also, I think, worked really well because I was self-employed with this YouTube channel that did not earn me that much money. And then last year, I had even less money and I bought nothing, and I was so happy with the stuff I owned. That, of course, is also because I owned everything I actually needed, but it just kind of showed me that at this point, when you have everything you need, not consuming can make you so happy, like getting in the habit of not consuming, not constantly chasing and the next purchase and that dopamine that it gives you. But then I started my new job in social work and suddenly I had a bit more money and I was like, yeah, but during the past few years I couldn't spend and I was kind of restricted. I felt a bit restricted. So let's buy some things now. And I felt like, oh my God, I did not even buy that much, but I still was overwhelmed. Now, it can have many different reasons, and they might not all be very logical for every single person. But at least for me, after like half a year of consuming a bit more, I realized that I kind of want to restrict myself again. And because I hate like very strict rules, I'm not gonna do a no-buy now either, I think. But I'm gonna just kind of watch more carefully what I buy and what I bring into my life. So I do not know where you see yourself in all of this. And I definitely know I've gotten comments before that said like, I don't know, restriction is bad always. And I know that I do feel that way when it comes to certain things. But maybe let me try to explain why I think this can be so beneficial. As I said, I have everything I need. And I think that is like a very, very important first step for all of this to make sense. But for me especially, there were a lot of things during the past few months that they did make sense to buy, or it was another sweater. I didn't need another sweater, but maybe it was very inexpensive and secondhand, or I got it even for free. And if you pay a lot of attention to my wardrobe, this is a new sweater. I picked it up yesterday for free, and I have another sweater, and I honestly don't even really know where to put it, because at this point my wardrobe is overflowing, or my 1.5 drawers that my wardrobe lives in. And I think that's also the really important part. Restriction doesn't mean like super, super hard boundaries, but making the choice in advance that I'm not planning on buying anything, or that I'm just planning or allowing myself to kind of buy or get or invite into my life 1, 2, 3 things a month, really helps me make these decisions. Also making this decision of like, is this really worth it? Is this really worth being one of the only things that's allowed in my life this month or this year? Makes it a lot easier to not get it. And also the experience that I know from last year of knowing how incredibly peaceful it felt to just own what I own, and to just use these things and not constantly think about all the new things that I could possibly buy. It really helps me to, just not buy anything. Before, I want to kind of also talk about the things that I don't like about it, or the limitations of this method and how to use it properly, or how I try to do that. I want to give a few more examples of maybe like good restrictions and bad restrictions, at least from my experience. So for the longest time, like I think 2 or 3 years, it was a few years back, I tried to get like 10,000 steps a day. And I used my phone for that, which was not ideal because my phone doesn't track steps that great. And that felt exhausting. Like I felt like I needed to take my phone from my desk to the bathroom, to the kitchen, to not miss a step, because 10,000 steps in my lifestyle were quite difficult. Also, I had a really hard time when I was sick, for example, because the app I used, or this goal of like having 10,000 steps every single day, was just not realistic. After a few years, I gave up, and it made me feel so much better to not try to achieve this, even though 10K steps definitely is like a healthy thing to do. But now I just try to, I don't know, go outside every day if it's possible, but I don't do it every single day. And I'm trying to find different solutions, but these 10,000 steps every single day with no excuse was not the restriction or the rule I needed that was helpful in my life. Another thing that really helps and that I really love is my camera setup. So when I started really getting into photography, I had a camera, and it was like a DSLR, a big camera, and then I had a lens, and then I had an additional lens for better quality, and then I had a lens that was really for this and that, macro and wide angle and zoom and all of these different kinds of lenses. And then I always either carried around so much weight for my camera, and then having to change lenses when you think you need a different lens, and that became exhausting. And then when I tried to choose the lenses to take with me, I would always feel like I could make the wrong decision. And so at some point I decided to crazy restrict myself, and now I just have this camera with one lens. And it's not even a zoom lens. So it's the same angle every single time. I film my vlogs on it, even though people say like, it's not wide angle enough for vlogs. I do my travel photography, I do my everyday photography, I do everything with this camera. I'm actually thinking about buying a new one, like an additional one, but it made me feel so much at peace, and it's just so relaxed and so easy because I do not have to even think about it. I can just take a picture with this camera. If I don't like it, I don't take it. And I do not have to take additional lenses. I do not have to worry about different focal lengths, nothing at all. And this restriction, I think, helped a lot for the joy of photography, to lessening the stress, and to not have back pain from lugging around all the camera gear maybe. Another thing that doesn't really work for me is like getting up at the same time every day. Like I love sleeping in, but then I also really like getting up early and having like more of the day, it feels like. But it's just, I do not seem to find a way to make a morning routine or stick to something or get up at some time of the day. And as long as I think that I need to do that, as long as I try to implement a routine like this and make a restriction, like make rules and restrictions to make sure that, I don't know, I stick to something, it feels so stressful. And so I'm not doing it. But I'm also not perfectly fine and happy with the way that I'm handling it now. And that, I think, really brings us to this other thing I want to talk about, which means like how to find a balance. So it seems like there's no perfect solution. And I think that is just the reality for many, many things. So I think the only thing that really makes sense is weighing the cons and the pros and deciding if there is more of a positive outcome or there is more of a negative outcome. And I think the example that I shared with you, like 10,000 steps, it was great because maybe I did move my body a bit more, but it made me so stressed about reaching this goal every single day that I don't think the overall outcome after like 2.5 or 3 years were actually positive, because it felt so great to just ditch that. On the other hand, I totally get that, just ditching something and just thinking like, yeah, no, not today, honestly would just not make it happen. So I think sometimes it's really rules over motivation, like restrictions over motivations, to make you keep going. An example that I'm still sticking with is Duolingo. That's like a language learning app, and then you have this streak and you kind of need to keep it up, but it's allowed to like miss it once in a while, and you can kind of purchase the things that help you not like lose your streak. And this is something that works for me. I've done it for like, I don't know, it must be over 2 years at this point, every single day, or like I missed like 10 times maybe. And there I think like, because if I didn't use this app, if I didn't use this streak and this, I need to do it every single day as a motivation, I do not think I would do it, like not at all. Because learning languages can feel really hard. And so I think this helps me because my motivation is not going to stick around as long as this restriction or rule is going to be there for me. It's still not always pleasant at 10 p.m. in the evening, like, oh yeah, I still need to do this today. But I think it's worth it. And that's why I'm doing it. But because in the end, the goal is not to set up as many restrictions as possible, at least not for me. For me, I do want to live a life that is as like authentic and free as possible. So I'm not a fan of like making routines out of my whole day and like making sure I do each and every step of things I'm doing according to my rules. So here I think it's really important to try to have as many rules and restrictions as necessary, but as few as possible. And during the past few years, when it came to my consumption, I really tried to like give up all the rules because I thought that this would lead to more freedom. I gave up the rule of just like being able to exchange the things in my wardrobe, like only owning 3 sweaters, for example. Then I gave up the rule of like only being able to buy one thing a month. But then, like after a while, I realized that I wasn't really more happy. And so I'm not really wanting to go back to very strict rules, but I'm still thinking a certain restriction, a certain intention helps me to to more so achieve the things that I want and to live according to my values. And I think values can be a very like first step to set up boundaries and restrictions, being like, no matter what I do, what I buy, what I spend my money on, what I spend my time with, is this according to my value? And if you have this small thing, that might be a first step to kind of make sure you actually spend your resources the way you want to live. But like this, I do think we all kind of always need to balance it out and find a way to figure out where these restrictions might actually make us freer and where they're just like annoying us and restricting us in a bad way. So I think that is it for today, and I would be really interested in hearing from you what you think about this topic. Do you have any restrictions for yourself? Like, are there any areas in your life where you feel like, actually, I really benefit and can live my life more freer, can free up more resources by just setting a rule or a restriction? Or are you the type of person that says like, no, I can just decide for myself in every single second of my life and I'm never going to regret it and it's always going to be fine, like no matter, I don't know, screen time restrictions or spending restrictions or bad time, whatever. I would be really interested in reading from you in the comments. And now I do want to link another video that you can check out right now if you want to. So thank you for watching, but also really thank you to all of my patrons. You get a podcast over there and I'm just glad for having you. But if you've watched the video until now, also just really thank you to you because that helps out my channel a lot. So I hope to see you there or in my next video. Goodbye.